Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this planning committee. As many of you will know, I'm Councillor Mark Bainan. I am chairing the meeting this evening. Just going to run through a bit of housekeeping. In the event of an emergency and the sounding of an alarm, the emergency evacuation procedure, unless otherwise instructed, is to leave by the nearest sign posted fire exit, unless otherwise instructed, and congregate by the statue in the marketplace. Anyone requiring assistance should remain in the seats and an officer will assist you from the building. So you see, this meeting is slightly different. We have, due to circumstances out of his control, our lead officer, planning officer, Barry Lomax, is going to be presenting from home today. He's logged into, I think we've all hopefully logged into the Google Meets invite so that we can share, well, he will be speaking to us through the Google Meets meeting link and sharing the presentation online through the Google Meets, the Google meeting link. So hopefully we all logged in, we all got that, we all muted ourselves and the rest of it. So we will be speaking, so the meeting is being recorded, although it's not being broadcast live. So yes, welcome to anyone who is listening to this. And we have Councillor Giles, yeah, it's done that way. We say it will be uploaded to the website at a later date. So yeah, please, because it's being recorded, as we can kind of continue and speak through the microphones as normal. Members are reminded the microphones must be switched on and spoken into clearly for the webcast. And also reminded to switch the microphones off once you finish speaking. And as usual, can you make sure your mobile phones are switched off or on silent mode? So those present this evening are members of the planning committee who I will call on as they indicate they wish to speak. Also present are a member of the Democratic Services team and our corporate head of planning. Quasi-judicial members of the public are reminded that the planning application process is constrained by the need to have regard to current planning policy at national, regional and local levels, as well as all other material planning considerations, including case law precedents. The decision-making process is often described as quasi-judicial because local planning authorities have to act reasonably within the bounds of planning law and the above considerations and are not free to determine planning applications simply because of the weight of public opinion. I confirm that all members of the committee have seen and read the late material.
Yes.
Yeah. And also you were sent copies of the representations made in relation to both applications. Is it correct? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So apologies for absence and attendance of substitute members. Fiona.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Ollie Waring.
Thank you very much. The minutes of the meeting of 18th of September 2024 are in front of me. Can I sign these as correct record of the meeting? So I'll do that at the end of the meeting. Declarations of interest in attendance at site visits. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other registrable or non-registrable interest relevant to any item on this agenda? I'm not seeing. We do. Councillor Hayes.
I will just say that I haven't attended a formal site visit, but being ward councillor for both items on the agenda this evening, I know the sites well and have visited them many times.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. For the record, I wish to confirm that no formal, Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, again, while there wasn't a formal site visit, I, in my own time, went to look and visit the site.
Okay, well, that's the next point. So yes, thank you. There was no formal site visit in relation to these applications, as we felt, because they were easily accessible to the public. If any other members undertook a personal site visit to view either of these sites, please can you indicate what Councillor Giles and Councillor George have done? And then we can do that. But yes, okay, so Councillor Davies, Councillor Hayes and myself. Thank you. So, moving swiftly on, the first planning item is 79 Penryn Road in Kingston upon Thames. I will now, hopefully Barry is ready and waiting. I'll pass over to Barry, our planning officer, to present this item. And also, before I do that, just to note, there's no public speakers on either item today. Thank you very much. Over to you, Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume you can hear me loud and clearly? Okay, thank you. So the first application is at 79 Penryn Road, application reference 23 oblique 03407, and it's for the demolition of the existing building and the erection of a mixed-use building comprising retail commercial space at the ground floor and residential on the upper floors with associated amenity space, blue badge parking, cycle parking and refuse. On screen now, the red dot indicates the site on the corner of Southsea Road and Penryn Road. And then here we see some aerial photographs taken from a bird's eye view showing the site in context. You'll note that it is a changing context with, I say recently, but happened quite a few years ago, with the new development built immediately to the north of the site with Sainsbury's and the Students' Union development. Well, not Students' Union, student accommodation development. On screen now on the left, you see the site forms part of the Surbiton Road local centre, and on the right you see that the roads surrounding the site are heavily controlled in terms of parking, and this scheme indeed, if permitted, would be subject to a no car permit requirement in the legal agreement. On site now you see the red edge of the site, the application site edged in red. Here we have some photographs showing the site as it currently is. It was previously a tyre and exhaust servicing mechanical car mechanics unit. So here we have the proposal in slightly more detail. So the demolition of the building and erection of a part 3, part 4 story building with 10 market dwellings and commercial space at the ground floor. The 10 dwellings, market dwellings, would be 2 3-beds, 1 2-bed and 7 1-beds. There would be 331 square metres of commercial space. That's a loss of approximately 200 square metres. The proposal would make an affordable housing contribution of £63,000. The applicant has submitted an independent viability assessment, which has been independently assessed by Carter Jonas, an independent group of consultants, who agree that the scheme can only contribute a maximum of £63,000, given the high land values and the inflation in construction costs. If, of course, those inputs into the viability appraisal were to change, there is an early and late stage viability review to ensure that any change in that viability assessment will be captured by way of a contribution, or if at the early stage, on-site provision of affordable homes. The development would be car free. There would be 30 cycle parking spaces, 20 residential and 10 for the retail or commercial space. Each first occupier would be granted 2 years free membership of a car club with 10 hours free use. There would be a contribution of £3,000 towards providing accessible parking bay within the vicinity of the site. There would be a carbon savings of 67% against building regulations. That would be achieved through a combination of air source heat pumps and solar panels. There would be a significant biodiversity net gain of 1,557%, given the site is in a very poor state, and there would be landscaping proposed as part of the proposal, comprising planting 8 small trees, in addition to 243 square metres of extensive green roof, along with other planting in the communal amenity areas. And there would be an urban greening factor of 0.41 rather, against the target requirement of 0.4. If I take you now through some of the existing plans, the ground floor is laid out in a commercial way. As we come up, there is an ancillary residential flat linked to the use as the garage. Access to the flat is only through the garage. And then at the rear, there is some mezzanine storage. And then as we come up to the top, you have roof with some a roof lantern to get light into that middle part of the building. And then here we have some existing elevations. This elevation shows the university halls of residence, or it's not the university halls of residence, it's just halls of residence rather, in the background. On screen now, you see the site layout as proposed. This is the ground floor commercial space at the front. The red dots indicating the commercial additions, the furthest north being the commercial refuse, the south being the cycle parking, and then the 2 greeny yellow dots indicating cycle storage and residential refuse recycling for the residential units. As we come up to the first floor, you see residential accommodation with each flat having access to some external amenity space. And on here, you see an external shared amenity space. And as we come up again, you see more residential accommodation with each flat having external amenity areas. And then again, as we come to the third floor, we see there is an emergency access route indicated on screen. That's only for emergencies, and that's controlled by way of condition. But again, each of the flats having access to amenity space. And on this floor, there is a communal external amenity space, which also has provision for child play equipment. Here we have the roof showing the photovoltaic cells. And in this area here, this is the plant room where the air source heat pump equipment would be kept. On screen now, you see some not aerial photography, so of elevational plans of the proposed building. And this is along the side, Southsea Road, again showing the student halls of accommodation to the rear. This is a section showing the building and its proximity to the student accommodation. There is approximately 4 meters. That's meant to be a straight line. Obviously, I can't draw a straight line properly. That line indicates there's about 4 meter gap from the windows to the elevation, which is mirrored by approximately, that's straighter, a similar distance from window elevation to the boundary. The daylight sunlight report submitted with the application demonstrates that there would be an impact on the windows that serve the lower part of the student accommodation. However, this is not an unusual situation in an urban area where we would take if a development is built close to the boundary, such as this, we would assume a building of a mirrored image on the other side and then use that as our baseline. When using that as a baseline, each of the windows arrive at values which would be acceptable in an urban area. This is a section through showing the privacy screening that would prevent incidental overlooking from the walkway into some of the windows in the student accommodation. On screen now, we see a typical bay detail showing the materials. Materials would be of a mixture of metalwork for that roof area you see indicated on screen. That's metalwork. And then as we come down, it will be a mixture of pale coloured brick and pale coloured textured brickwork with powder coated balcony balustrades and reconstituted stone sills. Here we see some landscaping detail showing that landscaping would be improved on site, a little bit of landscaping at the ground floor as indicated on screen. And then as we come up through the building, you see a host of the communal spaces being landscaped, play equipment here, and then green roofs on the flat element of the building, on the flat roofed element of the building. This plan just details the child's play space that would be provided at that third floor, which would be a mixture of 0 to 4, 5 to 11, and 12 to 17 play equipment. On screen now, you see a CGI image of the building taken looking down Southsea Road and then towards the Sainsbury's. If I take you to the late material just corrects a couple of things in the report, nothing significant. Condition 6 in the report requires the applicant to look at how they could possibly explore options to reduce the size of the plant room. Although we are content with the plant room as is, we're just looking to see whether it can be improved. They've indicated they can reduce it by 200 mil. They would like to amend this condition, but we think it should remain as written. And then if members were minded to approve, we would continue to work with the applicant to reduce the size of that plant room. There is an additional condition about a management plan to show that the external escape route that I mentioned is only used in emergencies, not used as any outdoor amenity space. And then in the late material, you have a final list of conditions. Taking all those things into account, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is to agree to approve the application subject to conditions and completion of a legal agreement, and to delegate authority to the Assistant Director to finalise the recommended conditions as set out in the report, including any amendments thereto, additions and or deletions in consultation with you, and to negotiate, agree, finalise the legal agreement, including adding to, amending and or deleting the obligations detailed, again in consultation with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Barry. So now open up to questions to Barry, please, about this application. So Councillor Davies first.
Thank you. I have two questions, quite quick. I didn't quite catch what you said after the 63,000 for the affordable homes levy. After you said that there was some kind of guarantee that that would happen or raise or something. Can you just repeat that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the 63,000 would be a required contribution, and then there would be a requirement for an early stage review. That would be if the development doesn't start within 2 years, the financial viability assessment needs to be reviewed again to see whether there's been any changes in the market, and if there have, to increase the provision on site. And then a late stage review would be a review later on in the programme to revisit those figures again to see whether there has been any change in the market, and if there has been a change in the market, an increase in that contribution for affordable homes. So the early and late stage review is our protection against the market significantly improving, and then the developer making more. So it's a protection that if the market improves, the developer has to increase their contribution to the authority for affordable homes.
Thank you. I understand. And my second question is about the play area on the roof. First question, is that normal? And what kind of fencing is going to go around that? Because I'm suddenly very concerned about children climbing and carrying on climbing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, it's becoming more usual to have play equipment on the roofs of buildings, given the limited space at ground level. The exact details of the play equipment and the surrounding would be subject to condition, but certainly if members were minded to approve, in officers discharging that condition, safety would be of paramount importance. But the exact details of how that would look would be subject to condition. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Sadra Hashimi.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned a 76% reduction in energy use due to use of heat pumps. And you also mentioned that there is a plant room. Do I assume that the heat pumps are in the plant room or outside? Because usually they need to be outside for them to be more efficient.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There would be some plant in the plant room, but then the air source heat pumps and where they would be located would be subject to condition to make sure, again, that they work most efficiently and effectively. What we do have is a condition requiring noise control. So no air source heat pump to be greater than 5 decibels above background levels at any point in time when measured at nearest windows. So there is that protection to ensure that there's no noise disturbance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that is a pretty important point, Officer Lomax. The reason is that heat pumps have to work 24/7. And the size of the heat pump defines the noise they're making. Now, the noise during the day might be not disturbing because there's all accommodation very close to it around the boundary. But in the middle of the night, when it's absolutely quiet, you got these humming heat pumps going all night, could be quite disturbing. So I think this point needs to be, I don't know how, but we need to think about this and put some conditions pretty strongly about the level of the noise. So maybe you have to use smaller heat pumps, but many of them which are more quiet rather than big ones, which are very noisy. So I would like this thing to be considered by you because they got accommodation all around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hashimi. I mean, that's not an area of expertise for me, but Barry, what would you suggest in response? What could we do potentially to, tighten up the regulations?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Environmental Health team have looked at the scheme and they raise no objection, subject to a condition which I'm trying to find. Condition 18, before the use hereby permitted commences, an acoustic report should be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority, demonstrating that the rating level of the cumulative sound emissions of the plant hereby permitted will not exceed 35 decibels when measured against the background noise, and that to be measured or predicted 1 metre externally to any window or habitable room at the nearest residential facade in line with British standard. So that condition would mean they would have to demonstrate, and that may have to use acoustic attenuation around the air source heat pumps, but all that information would need to be submitted and discharged before occupation in line with condition 18. So that's our standard condition that the environmental health team would like us to impose. I hope that helps. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very
Thank you, Chair. Just want to follow it up. These are heat pumps. I am not sure we have enough experience with heat pumps and the noise level. And also the noise level needs to be compared with night, in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. in the morning rather than during the day. So there needs to be better than this, in my opinion, in terms of conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Hayes would like to come in on this point.
Just to give some reassurance, Farshid, yes, we do have a lot of experience with heat pumps, and the condition is no more than 5 decibels higher than the background noise at any time. So that means in the middle of the night as well as the middle of the day. So yes, they can make more noise during the day because it tends to be noisier, but at any time during the day. So they have to be able to prove that that's the case to comply with the condition. Unless, of course, I've got that stupidly wrong, but I don't think I have.
Barry, you raised your hand. Do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. And what is of most importance in line with the condition is that the noise levels in the habitable rooms close by meet the World Health Organization's maximum noise levels. So the World Health Organization say that you should have, I think it's 35 decibels, no more than 35 decibels in your room in the evening. That would be a requirement of the condition. So you can't have a breach, and that's all done in line with British standard. And our environmental health team are conversant in dealing with these things, and indeed taking action if action needs to be taken if there is a statutory noise nuisance. So this condition has been written in. It is a usual condition you'll see across most local authorities by environmental health teams, exactly for this reason. Any plant needs to make sure that it still preserves World Health Organization noise levels within the rooms closest by. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I'd just like to do one other thing, because Barry, heat pumps exchange and derive heat from the environment. During the day, when it's sunny, they work at a much lower level. At night, when it's cold, they're absolutely running at top level. Therefore, they cause a lot more sound during the night when they're running at their top condition than during the day. So please make sure that the test is done in the night when they're all running at the maximum speed. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if you want to, if you want to come back on that, Barry. I mean, I think from what you're saying, we've obviously got strict rules in place and a condition there that, as we would do in any building, to make sure that the noise isn't above a certain level. And if it is, then that will need to be rectified. They'll need to take, developer will need to take remedial action to reduce the sound. And so that is all in the decision that we're making. That's all taken care of via condition. That's something we could enforce to make sure that it doesn't exceed, an appropriate level. Yeah, is that correct?
Absolutely, and it's not unusual. We're getting more and more heat pumps in, where we used to get lots of air conditioning units in, and we have a similar condition now, where the condition is being looked at in line with advances in technologies. And I would, rest assured, this is the condition that will preserve the amenities of neighbouring properties. And if there is an issue, the environmental health team will be able to go in, accompanying with the planning team, to ensure that any attenuation that's required is put in. Air source heat pumps are becoming quieter as technology moves on, and then they are housed in acoustic attenuated boxes to minimise noise. But I appreciate that they do work at different levels during the day and the evening. But as much as I can, I hear your concerns. They are well-founded concerns, and this condition will address those concerns. And I hope that helps. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I see your hand, Councillor Giles. There's a couple of others before you. So Councillor Hurlinger, then Councillor George, then Councillor Giles.
On condition 41, Barry, just want to confirm that the wording is such that if you do checks to see that the emergency exit is okay, which I think you should do sort of from time to time, see nothing untoward has happened, but that's also covered. So it's not just in the actual event of an emergency, you go there, but you also can test to see that everything is clear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's important that the reason for that condition isn't to deal with any fire safety concerns, although that is obviously important. The reason for this condition is, although the first is about a building management obligation to make sure that fire escapes are kept clear, and that's controlled by different legislation. The purpose of this condition is to make sure that that amenity deck isn't used for outdoor amenity space, because that then would cause problems with looking into the windows of the student accommodation next door. So the condition isn't about fire safety, although fire safety is important, but managed by different legislation. This is about making sure that residents don't sit out on that deck and then have a direct view into the neighbouring student accommodation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there's Councillor George.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. First of all, regarding the height, what's the comparison between the height, the proposed height, and the building opposite on the corner, opposite South Sea Road? Can you just have a comparison with that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a drawing that shows this with the neighbouring building. You mean number 39, do you?
Yeah. Yes.
So the number 39 is subject to discussions about its redevelopment in any event. It did get permission relatively recently for, I think it's a 3-storey building there. There is a slight difference in height, but number 39 is in discussions about a redevelopment of number 39. But unfortunately, I don't have, whilst we're talking, I should try and dig out a drawing if I can, showing the comparisons, but I don't have one at the minute. So if you want to ask other questions, I'll see whether I can pull one up.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, this is more about the design of it and the look and feel of it. It's noticeably got a flat roof. I know there's one opposite the side, but along that road, just along next to it, as you look at it to the left, the recent redevelopment doesn't have a flat roof. It is actually quite low and fits in well with the streetscape, and yet there's a large bit of development behind it, and so that really works rather well. This doesn't fit in with that at all, and doesn't fit in with any other building around there, as I can see. So I just wonder what guidance the developers were given for them to end up with a building that doesn't fit in with anything. And is rather high and stark. I mean, it does come out further than next door as well, which really, being so tall, flat, modern, and further towards the road, makes it look quite stark. So I just wondered, are we as a council now sort of promoting that sort of thing? Or, was any advice given to them regarding that? Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this on screen now shows you the difference in height between the application property and the neighbouring property. So there is a difference in height of approximately a storey. With regards to where they are, where they've taken their design cues from, of course, the largest building in close proximity is a new student accommodation with the Sainsbury's at the front, which is of a similar architectural style. As you can see on the imagery here, flat roof. Flat roof is not an uncommon provision in this area or an uncommon architectural feature. The building has gone through our urban design team, who consider it to be a high quality building in and of itself. It will be a catalyst for improvements in the area. And then if we look at the CGI imagery, well, first of all, if we look at the university buildings behind, you'll see that it is respectful of the university. Sorry, I keep on saying university. I mean student building behind, and then looking at the CGI imagery, which we'll get to. It is a building with an extruded skeleton, which is not dissimilar to maybe the townhouse, which is slightly further up the street. It's of a high quality material palette, and we think works well on this corner site, turns the corner successfully, and creates a positive entrance into the heart of Kingston town centre. But I do appreciate some bits of architecture are, of course, subjective. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor George, have more questions? No, okay. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the waste collection, because I noted in the public comments that the SRRA, whilst they support the principle of development, did outline in some detail the already heavy amount of waste collection vehicles that they have along Penryn Road from the different commercial premises there. And so, I mean, with respect to that, I just wonder if, through you, Chair, Barry might just be able to give his comments on that, and what, if anything, we can do to try and ease the strain with respect to waste collection.
Thank you. Yeah, Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, having looked at, of course, members will be familiar with Penryn Road being a very busy road. So certainly waste collection, refuse and recycling is best taken off Southsea Road. And of course, as with all refuse recycling vehicles, they do stop, and they do cause a small amount of disruption for a very short period of time whilst they collect the rubbish. Condition 33 requires the developer and all their successors in title to take all reasonable steps to ensure that all refuse and recyclable materials associated with development are stored within the dedicated store area shown on approved plans, and that no refuse or recycled materials should be stored or placed for collection on public highway except on the day of collection. So there is that protection by condition 33 that all waste needs to be kept inside, only presented outside on day of collection, and then the waste vehicle will drive down Southsea as it does already to pick up the waste and recycling. We have looked at alternatives with the developer, but this would be it's the most appropriate site. It's the most appropriate location within the site for waste storage to be stored, and B, the waste vehicle already moves down Southsea to collect waste, and therefore it would make sense for it to pick up this waste en route. But we have explored as best we can alternatives, and this is the best option that we can arrive at with the developer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. And just finally, and forgive me if it's already been covered, but just with respect to sort of the car cap agreement that SSRA also refer to, could the officer also just comment on that?
Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the development would be subject to the legal agreement preventing residents from having access to any permits in the area for car parking. So yes, there will be no increase in parking by residents on the highway, unless of course they have a dispensation, i.e. they are blue badge holders. Of course that would be different, but they do not have access to permits or visitor permits. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions for Barry? It doesn't look like we do. So we'll move to the comments section, but if people do have questions do pop into your head, then please feel free to let me know, and you can put them to Barry. Before we do that, I just want to move the recommendations as set out in the agenda report, page A4.
Seconded.
Application. And thank you, jumping ahead there, Councillor Hayes will second that. So that has been moved as a matter of procedural matter. We're yet to make a decision on that. So I can open up the debate to include any comments that members may have. Councillor Giles and then Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I support this application. I think it's a site that's in need of some love. I'm content with the conditions that have been laid down here, obviously subject to any final tweaking. And personally, I also support particularly the use of heat pumps, taking into account the condition that's listed. I think, as we look to move towards a carbon neutral net zero, we need to be encouraging more developments to be using heat pumps. So yes, I'll be voting in favour of this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Hayes and then Councillor Davies.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'd echo those comments. It's not just this site that has been vacant for many years and fallen into dereliction, but indeed the one on the other corner of South Sea Road, and indeed the one next to that. So not just 39, but 41 as well. And so getting this whole area tidied up has been a long challenge for us. And indeed, the patience of residents in South Sea Road has been wearing a bit thin, because not only doesn't it look very nice as it is at the moment, but it has attracted a lot of antisocial behaviour around there, and particularly in the evenings and at night times when that's rather a dark and dingy corner for nefarious ne'er-do-wells to carry on there, whatever it is they might get up to. This is very welcome in the fact that that it will be developed, and I think there's a very good chance that we're not just going to give it permission, but it will actually be built. And it is also welcome to see that the work has, after again a long period of inactivity, also started on 39 and 41. So from that point of view, it is very welcome. I just want to touch on the points that Councillor George made about the design. It is one of those occasions when beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We can see that the architects have made a nod to the modernist design of the townhouse further along the road. It doesn't quite have the elegance of a Sterling Prize award-winning building, but nevertheless, it's not unpleasant. But I do just want to touch on the points that Councillor Joyce was making about there are no flat roofs. There are a great deal of flat roofs. In fact, the next building round in South Sea Road is very similar to what is being proposed here, and this will match very well with that. On the other side of Penryn Road is Penryn Gardens, which is a collection of low-rise council flats, all with flat roofs. So it's wrong to say that there aren't any. Yes, there are pitch roofs, including the building right next to it, but that isn't the only feature of the road. So I don't think it's going to stick out like a sore thumb because it's got a flat roof. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I think the mix of units is good. The fact that it's got any 3-bedroom units in it is a miracle, and the fact that it's got 2 is a sort of double miracle, really. So we're grateful for that as well. And we'll take what we can get. So all in all, I think this is quite a suitable offer for that particular location. Not the easiest to develop, being as everything around it has already been done. And so I think this is, in fairness, quite a good solution to what is not a straightforward site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davies.
Yeah, just to echo that, I was just going to say I really like this. I like the nod to the townhouse. It's going to match quite nicely. And in fact, I came straight from the townhouse to have a look at the site the other night, which was a bit depressing. And this would be much, much better. On the flat roofs, I think you can't have a green roof. You can have a slightly sloping green roof, but it has to be fairly horizontal. And plus, of course, solar panels work much better when they're flat, as I know to my cost.
Councillor George.
Thank you. From my questioning, you probably know where I'm going. I've not necessarily got a problem with flat roofs per se, but there are I struggle to find any flat roofs around there apart from the office building opposite. The flats opposite do have pitched roofs. The adjoining building that was recently redeveloped has a pitched roof as a nod to the housing next to it, and then it builds up behind it. I can't believe that that they weren't shown that route to get planning permission. Otherwise they would have stuck sort of 3 or 4 or 5 stories on the front as well. It is a corner plot, and you tend to get a bit taller on the corner, and indeed opposite on the other side of the road there's a taller building, but this one looms even over that, and so it goes from above that to way below it to the normal streetscape along, which has recently been redeveloped. And we're talking about that building has flat roofs and tall buildings as well. Yes, but it's behind, it's subservient. And they're also set back. This one is right in your face. It comes right up to the road. And to me, that's I've got a big problem with that. I think it's out of keeping with the surroundings, and it is too tall. To me, when you look at it, especially when you look dead on, it's a real hodgepodge of things. And because it's not a building in its own right, like the townhouse down the road, because it's adjoined to other things, that's what's going to happen, because it can't easily fit in. And on top of everything else, it's got no affordable housing, and just to add insult to injury, we're going way over what would normally go there. We're bending over backwards to give them something. And what do we get for it? No affordable housing. To me, well, I won't go on because you know where I'm coming from, but to me, this is totally out of keeping and doesn't fit in. And yeah. I couldn't vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor George. Do we have any further comments to be made? So I think, I'll just quickly add. Well, I'll be voting it in favour. As Barry mentioned, I think the design, a lot of it is subjective. I do like the design. I think it's modern. It does. I think the vernacular of that area, it is quite varied anyway. So trying to build a building on that site that matches the local area is going to be difficult, because it's quite. You've got so many different styles, different types of buildings, but it does complement, as I say, the townhouse and a couple of other buildings nearby. And I think it was a drastic improvement on what's there. I think we all agree on that. And given what the need for housing in the area, then I think this is something that has to be approved, and I'm quite happy to approve it. Just echo comments about affordable housing. I think we're always upset there's never enough affordable housing, or in this case, no affordable housing. We are kind of restrained by the rules and the assessments that are in place. We'd like them to be, sometimes we can't get our head around them, but they have been done by independent assessors who look at the viability of affordable housing, and we have to kind of take their assessment on board. But we'd always like to encourage developers to look keenly at the affordable housing offering whenever they're putting forward proposal to us. But on that note, I think we'll move to the vote. So can I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? You got that? So all those against. And I think that's everyone. So I don't think there's any abstentions. Is that right? So have you made a note? You've got that. Thanks, Fiona. So on that note, like I said, the application has been approved. Thank you, everyone. Are we okay to move on to the next item? Does anyone desperately need a comfort break? We're okay to crack on. Okay, to crack on. Okay, excellent. So I just find the page in my notes. We will be moving on to item A2, which is 87 and 87A Surbiton Road. And again, over to Barry to present this item. Over to you, Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the next application is 87 and 87A Surbiton Road, reference 23/0281 2, and it's for the demolition of a pair of semi-detached dwellings and erection of a new 4-storey building comprising 12 apartments with associated access, private communal space, refuse and cycle storage. Here we see on screen now the site indicated by a red dot, and then we see some aerial photography showing that the area has been subject to a reasonable amount of change architecturally in relatively recent times. On the left-hand side, you see the site just falls outside of the Surbiton local centre. On the right-hand side, you see, again, the area is mostly controlled by parking controls or restrictions. Here we see the application site outlined in red. We see a plan. The top left is the application property, and then we see the top right is to the north of the application site, and the bottom right is to the south of the application site. The proposal is for demolition of the pair of dwellings and erection of a 4-storey building comprising 12 apartments. There will be 12 market dwellings representing a net increase of 10 dwellings, 4 1-beds, 5 2-beds and 3 3-beds. It would be a car-free development. It would have an urban greening factor of 0.41 against a target of 0.4. There would be a carbon savings of 49.5%, again using PV panels and air source heat pumps. There are biodiversity enhancements here, however. This scheme was submitted prior to the biodiversity net gain requirements, so it's just enhancements here. There is 0 affordable housing here, but there would again be an early and late stage viability review. The difference here, of course, is land values associated with the existing residential use are much higher than the land values associated with the mechanical garage that we had previously. Pardon me, like with the previous scheme, each of the residents would get 2 years free membership of a car club and 10 hours free use. Here we see on site now, the application site, 2 semi-detached properties. And we have the existing plans. And then here we have the proposed layout with the property as laid out, and then a storeroom for bicycles at the rear. So this is the ground floor. There would be 4 apartments on each level. So you see the front garden laid out with landscaping with access to refuse recycling at the top here, and then cycle storage to the rear of the buildings, access by this side access with some visitor cycle parking at the front. As we come up through the building, you see each of the flats provided with external balcony space, with the top floor stepping in so as to minimise its bulk and mass. And then as we get to the top, we see a biodiverse green roof, and then we see the air source heat pumps laid out as such. The application is subject to a condition requiring details of the photovoltaic cells to be submitted to and approved in writing. This scheme does rely on PV, so there is a condition requiring details of those to be submitted and approved in writing by the planning authority. On screen now, you just see some of the amenity space towards the front of the property, and then we see some imagery showing the proposed block of apartment accommodation next to its neighbouring properties of similar height to the property on the south side, taller than the property to its north. And then here we have architectural watercolour type imagery showing the proposal in situ. The application would be constructed from brickwork with metal balustrades, aluminium windows, and then at the bottom right here you see the screening that's proposed to go around the air source heat pumps. However, there is a condition again about noise from those heat pumps. If I take you to the late material, the late material adds additional CGI imagery, which is in the presentation, and then additional condition 35 that requires details of those photovoltaic cells, and then a final list of conditions. Taking all those into account, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is to approve the application subject to conditions and the completion of a legal agreement, and to delegate authority to the Assistant Director of Planning and Infrastructure to finalise the recommended conditions and make any alterations thereto in consultation with you, and to negotiate, agree and finalise the legal agreement again in consultation with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Barry. And so again, there's no registered speakers. So can we start with questions to Barry, please? Who would like to kick us off? We have, okay, Councillor Giles, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of the objections in this application relate to the lack of parking on the site. Obviously, I know it's a car-free development. Through you, Chair, can we just seek confirmation that, as per most developments in parking permit areas, that those who move into the properties will not be eligible to apply for the existing parking permits?
Thank you. Yeah, Barry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, that's simple. Do we have any other questions? It doesn't appear that we do. Councillor George.
Thank you. Just a quick one, really. So the building that is being replaced is quite a traditional style of house, of which there are further on along the road on the opposite side as well. I mean, presumably there's nothing to stop all those other houses doing something similar to this. Does this set a precedent at all, or what? Thank you.
Yeah, Barry, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wouldn't say it sets a precedent, or whether this has set any precedent, I would say not. There are lots of other examples along this street where I suspect what would have been family-sized dwellings have been knocked down and flats being built. But of course, each planning application is dealt with on its own merits. And one thing that we are dealing with now as a borough with a significant housing target, nearly the 1,000 to be delivered every year for 10 years, a significant majority of that housing is to be found on, to use that horrible phrase, densification of small sites, just as this, where we have a target, nearly half our housing is to be found on small sites of less than 0.25 of a hectare. And to densify, I'm not sure that is a word, but the mayor thinks it is in his London plan. So yes, densification is what is required. But I hope that answers your question, Councillor George. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes, you want to come in on this point?
Yes, if I may, Chair. These are the only two, I'm not sure they're original in terms of the age of the total age of the street, but they're the last two more original houses remaining on that side. So they're a bit of an anomaly. They're much larger than the standard suburban semis on the other side of Surbiton Road, which are still by and large family accommodation. There are some students there. These two are houses in multi-occupancy. They have been for several years, and they have been student accommodation with up to 8 individuals living in each. I have an amusing canvassing anecdote. If anybody would ever like to hear it, I shan't bore you with it now. But it's good for those amongst us who like these sorts of things. However, to be serious for a moment, so I don't think it does set any precedent at all. The architecture and the nature of the buildings at this end of the road are wildly different. And frankly, anything that improves the architecture should be very welcomed indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Do we have any further questions? It doesn't look like we do. So as before, just going to put forward the recommendation as per, where are we? 1 second, sorry. Page A, that's right, yes. So just looking at moving the recommendations as set out in the agenda report, page A81 to permit. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hayes. Thank you very much. And do we have any, so we'll open up now for any comments. So Councillor George and then Councillor Giles, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, design-wise, I'm not overly keen on this, as you might have guessed from the previous application that we discussed. However, I think that this end of the road can take it a bit more, and it is its own building, not attached to other stuff, which sort of gives it a bit more freedom, I think. I do think it's a touch too tall. It reaches the top, you know, it's the same height as the tall block next to it at the apex of the roof. Now that's very different. You know, that's pushing it again when you're having a flat roof that reaches the height of that pushes it a bit higher. And quite frankly, I don't think it fits in. I think you could have something more modern here because you've obviously got, even though I mean, let's face it, we have got some ugly buildings there, even with pitch roofs, and possibly my least favourite building of all time on the corner of the Crescent there, which I think is particularly ugly. So I'm sure hopefully it'll beat that. To me, this looks a bit glassy and a bit like, I don't know, it reminds me of something you might find in Benidorm or something that's overlooking the sea. And it doesn't, to me, it doesn't fit in with Surbiton at all. However, in this particular, I'm minded that I potentially might vote for this one, just because I think where it is, and we have got to densify, as we've been told. It's a shame we can't densify a bit nicer and a bit more in keeping, and just a little bit lower. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor George. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chair. I think I want to start by putting on record, I know we're not being live streamed in the usual way, but to anyone that does listen back, you know, my urge is if you take the time to make comments on a planning application, please do then come and speak. I appreciate some people have other commitments, but we had a good number of objections to this, but we had no registered speakers, and I find it at best unhelpful and at worst discourteous to the committee. So I can only go by what I have in the written comments. I don't agree, given the location we're talking about, that this development will be the reason that traffic increases, as a lot of the objectors seem to say. It's already a high traffic area because of where it is. And I don't share the view that this will make it significantly worse. I accept the fact there'll be more dwellings there. I am also reassured by the officer's comments around the parking permits, which seems to be an issue within this bundle of objections as well. I don't agree personally. The design is of poor quality. I take Councillor George's point around the height and some of the objectors' points. But look, all in all, on balance, I don't have, based on the evidence I have in front of me, any reasons to turn this application down that in turn would be upheld if it went to the planning inspectorate. And so whilst it may not be the best scheme, it's certainly a scheme that I think falls within our planning policies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. David, did you want to say something? You don't know, do you want to decide quickly?
I just want to echo quite a lot of that, just say how positively I feel about this application. Maplehurst Close is wider than it looks, and there's a bit more space than you might just think looking at the diagrams. And I'm just really amazed that you can get 12 flats into such a small area, really, and they're not tiny flats. So I think it's a really impressive design.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes.
Yes, so another one in my ward, and indeed very near to where I live. So it's an area I do know well. I've had some comments mostly about the trees, in fact, from folks who live in Facet Road behind it. So I've looked into that and have some assurances that all the existing mature trees will not only survive, but indeed be positively protected, and 2 or 3 of them have PPOs on them already. There is no polite way of putting it. There is some very indifferent architecture at this southern end of Surbiton Road, the building opposite, Councillor George is absolutely right. Coronation Court is very far from an award-winning piece of architecture. But also the older Garrick's House is not the world's most beautiful building, and neither is the neighbour at 85. I actually quite like the sort of Art Deco-esque villa style of this building, and I think it will look quite good in that setting and up the game at that end of the road. So I welcome it from that point of view. Again, it's sad that there is no affordable housing, but we need a change of government legislation in order to be able to enforce any of that. And at the moment, we haven't got it. I think the points that have been made about there is room on either side here, not only the entrance, the vehicular entrance to the rear of Maplehurst Close, which is proper road width next door, but there's also the driveway to the small block of flats at 85 as well. So I think it will sit very comfortably here. It has its own long garden at the moment, and then there is long gardens between the back of it and Facet Road. So I don't think it's going to interfere with anybody's outlook from that point of view. And with the landscaping that's going to be proposed as part of this, and the retention of all the existing mature trees, I think this is something that we can easily give planning permission to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Do we have anyone else who'd like to make any comments? No, I don't think I need to add very much. I think, yeah, echo many of the comments made, particularly what you're saying, Councillor Hayes. Yeah, I think the design's quite nice, but I think it will be, it's kind of quite inoffensive, not necessarily a bad thing, but it will be much better than a lot of the other buildings around there, and hopefully, help to improve the area. And as Councillor Hayes says, future developers in the area might be minded to up their game a bit more. And yeah, echo points about affordable housing. We'll carry on saying that for a long time to come, I think. So I think we're ready to go to a vote. Raise your hands, please, if you'd like to vote in favour. And that is unanimous. So that, I think, brings the meeting to an end. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And I close this meeting. And thank you, Barry, as well. And wishing you well. Hope you're feeling a lot better. It's now 8:37. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Cheers, Barry.